Back to the Montgomery County Council. Today we'll receive an update from our Office of Intergovernmental Relations on the legislative session, vote on a position on HB 996, and then accept a briefing from central staff and OIR on police reform bills in the General Assembly. Let me turn it over to Director Winger for an update. We have I should say, a limited amount of time for this, so we hope we can move it ahead. We also have a limited amount of influence we should be humbly aware of. And I know we requested I think it was Councilmember Reamer that requested a briefing on the bill. As I've reminded my colleagues, and I think Councilmember Rice would back me up on this as a former member of the General Assembly, our delegation expects our input on county bills and bi-county bills, and we're certainly free to weigh in on statewide policy, but we should, do so with the understanding we're probably doing it for, for our purposes, and I'm not sure that they're hanging on our advice for their decision making. But that's my point of view as we talk about many of these statewide priorities, as important as they are. So with that, let me turn it over to Director Wenger.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, on this kind of blustery day of raining slush here in Annapolis. I don't know what it's doing in Montgomery.
Same.
But let's just hop right into this. So we're just about halfway through session. A number of big things have already happened that we were very interested in. We have a relief package. I sent you the details, and you've read a lot about that in the press, about a lot of the pretty valuable benefits that are going to be derived from that package. So I think that most people are pleased with it, and it's signed into law. And I think there might even be some checks out the door already from the comptroller's office. Vetoes have occurred, the overrides have occurred, so we know where things stand on that. And what's left of the big things that the 21 session members still need to accomplish? They still need a budget. They have agreed to do police reform, which we're going to talk about after we talk about House Bill 996. That's a big issue that's outstanding. And then also, I'm just going to raise this as an issue. And that's that if the Biden plan does pass, and it passes on time and passes in a similar form that it's been introduced so far, things like stay on track with that, the state will be the recipient of a significant amount of money. And I think it'll be a matter of the General Assembly if they want to discuss during the session what the plans would be for that, or if they want to leave it for a later date, or at least put a plan in place for how that money might move through the system and what type of legislative oversight might be applied to that money. And that's what's going on here. And I guess we can hop right into House Bill 996, turn it over to Carolyn or whomever.
Hello, everyone. Carolyn Chen, Legislative Analyst with County Council. We'll be discussing House Bill 996, turning it back over to OIR to give a briefing on it. And I believe we have Durbin on here to answer any questions.
And Amy.
Okay, there we go. Hello. Great. Amy, Ms. Salmon, want to kick us off?
Sure. So this bill, House Bill 996 and Senate Bill 763, would do several things. It would require the local licensing board of each county to issue a Class A beer and wine license to be used in conjunction with self-service or delivery-based retail. Just a reminder, a Class A license is a retail license. In Montgomery County, it would be to sell beer and wine, and that's what this bill does. And the requirements in this bill would be, it would allow a chain store to obtain this license. It would require us to actually give it to them. And it would have to be located in a priority funding area. The priority funding areas include enterprise zones, heritage areas, and then the area located between I-495 and the District of Columbia. So that's where the bill is requiring the local government to act. And then It also would allow us to give the Class A license to a retail establishment that offers a full line of food products, fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, uncooked meat, and that sort of thing. It would also require that they have 50% of their square footage of the public area dedicated to that, those food items. It would, the third thing it would do is allow the local licensing board to issue a Class A for a convenience and food product delivery company that would have a certain amount of food, frozen foods, and that sort of thing. It would be no larger than 15,000 square feet, and it would also have to be in a priority funding area. This bill in the House version was actually heard on Friday, and it had an extensive hearing. It was a couple hours long, and there was a very robust discussion about all components of this bill, both the chain stores, the grocery stores selling alcohol, which is a big statewide issue, as well as putting them in priority funding areas. The Senate bill will be heard on March 5th.
Is there any position from the administration?
The county executive has not taken a position on this bill.
Okay. Is that we have colleagues who want to speak. Is that in the full presentation?
That is, yeah.
Great. Okay. Council Member Friedson.
Yes, thank you for this. I hope we will support this. Delegate Lily Chi, who everybody here knows quite well, and certainly understands the county quite well, has proposed the House version. The Senate version is proposed by Senator McCray. I think residents are understandably confused and perplexed as to a lot of our alcohol laws in the state of Maryland. But probably the biggest one they're confused about is why they can't purchase beer and wine in grocery stores. This is a rare restriction across the country, and it's even further confusing because in 1978 there was the single license grandfathering, and so certain grocery stores in the county are allowed to have this license while others aren't. So this is one small step among many, I believe, that are needed to bring our alcohol regulation in the state and at the county into the 21st century. But this is one where I think there is significant support among residents, does not interfere with separate conversations that I'm happy to have at a more appropriate time about the county's role in the distribution and retail sales of alcohol, but one that I hope that we will support. So I would move for us to support the cross-filed legislation in the House and the Senate.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion on the table. Council member, we're going to have some discussion. Councilmember Reamer, I believe you were next.
Okay, and I seconded the motion. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was looking for the packet information. I guess we didn't get this in packet form. Am I right?
No.
All right. Sorry, I might have missed the first few seconds. So I support this. Again, can you explain? Does this restrict where we can provide these licenses to those areas that are designated, or does it?
So it does not. It does not restrict the area where we can, through our own board, give the licenses. It merely has a restriction and a requirement that we give it in priority funding areas. So
We're obligated to provide them in priority funding
that's
areas.
correct.
We're allowed to provide them in other places.
That's correct. As long as provided they have, a certain amount of food that they're offering. So that's the difference. It is required if they come to us and say, the stores come to us and say, we want this license. The state will be requiring the Montgomery Board of License Commissioners to issue that license if it falls into a priority funding area.
Okay, was there any rationale given for that specific approach? It's rather novel.
After watching the hearing, I believe the intention was to try and get grocery stores into areas that may otherwise not want to locate there. So, just thinking in terms of other priority funding areas across the state, I'll let Councilmember Friedson speak. Did you want to answer that?
Yeah, there was a particular sensitivity to food deserts, and the requirement was to help address food desert. That's the policy rationale behind, from what I understand from the sponsors. The other issue is that in the way that state alcohol regulation occurs, there is a lot of deference given to protecting existing interests. And this would take away some of that. I mean, that's unique to, in many ways, to Article 2B and other businesses. There wouldn't be significant deference given to the impact of one business on another, business's profitability, so to speak. But that is part of the state code. So those are the two reasons, at least, that I have heard from those who proposed the bill.
Okay, well, I think it's long overdue. I think our residents expect to be able to buy beer and wine, at least at a grocery store. And, I think we can do this. It's not a fiscal issue to the county. It has no impact whatsoever on any of the other issues. But I think it's probably the most important issue for your average resident is just some logic and rationality to the system, not having to make multiple trips. I think that's kind of the core. The system that we have is basically a convenience tax. It puts a restriction on how convenient it is for you to be able to purchase beer and wine. And it puts a barrier in front of you to do that, which redounds to the benefit of the small retailers that fit into the market created by that inconvenience. And it'll certainly have some impact on some of those. But I think it's long past time that people be able to have the same shopping experience in the county as they can have probably almost anywhere else in the country. Thanks.
Thanks. Councilmember Glass.
Thank you very much. I appreciate and associate myself with the comments of Councilmember Friedson and Reamer. To underscore this, those of us who think that we should, modernize our 100-year-old liquor laws here, some of the stumbling blocks we as a government and council have come upon recently in modernizing those laws comes down to the fiscal note. And here, as Councilmember Reamer just said, there is absolutely no loss to county revenue by approving this and expanding opportunities for our residents to have a little more convenience. And that's really what it comes down to. And, I spoke with Delegate Chi yesterday about this. And I think, quite frankly, from where Delegate Lily Chi is coming from and where Senator Cory McCray is coming from, we have people who are looking at it from two different economic perspectives, and labor is supportive of this as well. And I think that is a good thing. And so I support this and hope others will too.
Okay, any other requests to speak? I don't see any.
Yes, sorry, Mr. Council President.
I beg your pardon, Council Vice President Albornoz.
Thanks. So this, for me, falls under the all politics is local bucket. This is a question I got asked a lot during the campaigning process 2 years ago, and lots of folks wondering, why is it that some grocery stores have the ability to do it and others don't? I just had a couple of questions. Are large grocery box stores such as Costco included in this bill, or is this limited to a specific type of grocery store?
So there is no nothing precluding them from participating. It says independently owned or part of a corporation. and they just simply have to be in the priority area. Is that your understanding as well, Kathy?
Yes, I'm sorry. So anyone really can apply. It depends on whether they're in one of those areas or not.
Okay.
And for the ones that we're permitted to give, they would have to have, X amount of fresh food categories, which of course, Costco, that sort of thing would have.
Right.
Okay, that's helpful. And then would it's a fascinating issue, and it just underscores this is a state issue. People have been asking for a long time, why can't the county just do this on its own? And this underscores that reason. And so, I think there have been many folks that have been waiting for this a while. It's an issue I happen to be more familiar with because I did get so many questions about it 2 years ago. And so I appreciate Delegate Chi's leadership in trying to advance this. I do think it makes sense for us to support it. And so thank you.
Thank you. Some of you have very funny texts. Councilmember Juanda.
That was a great lead in. Thank you. I appreciate that. Hopefully it wasn't me.
Wasn't you? Nope.
Appreciate it. Is anyone from, well, let me ask a couple questions. It was mentioned that labor is supportive. I'm a little confused because there's no packet. So and I've seen a couple of emails from colleagues who I understand where they're coming from, but it would be helpful for me to know a little bit more. This is complicated, right? You have stores that are authorized to sell beer and wine in the county. You have some that are grandfathered in. The 78 law was mentioned. I live down the street from one here in White Oak. You have our ABS goals, our alcohol beverage services goals, which we've done the best in the state and in the region as far as reducing drunk driving and the public health goals of why we regulate. So there's a lot of interplay here, but I am sensitive too that, the average person's like, well, why can't I go to this store and get that? So I understand that concern. We all heard that a lot. Is there a stance from so two questions, and I don't know if Dale is on or somebody, is there a stance from the alcohol beverage services from the executive side? And have the county labor unions, particularly McGeo or anybody else, taken a position on this bill?
Disturbance here. Kathy?
There is no stance because, we stand with the county executive on his stance, but there has been talk amongst the state with the liquor boards because it does take away the liquor board's powers to, they cannot qualify one of those businesses that are in one of the zones. So that is a little issue. You'll hear that with some of the liquor boards. So it does take away powers. And
as far as authorizing where these stores can be located.
Well, no, qualifying the applicants.
I'm sorry, qualifying the applicants of who can have beer and wine in their store.
Correct. Because they have to. They don't have a choice.
Right.
So there's some question if there's a violation, what happens next? And there's other questions concerning the way that was written. Actually, I spoke with Delegate Chi about that. There's also hearing the testimonies on Friday, there's concern with small business, the impact on small business as well. So those were the two major concerns I've heard from the other liquor boards and of course from our liquor board as well. But
so small business, concern with small business retailers who currently do sell beer and wine.
Correct.
Being priced out by Costco and other and losing business. That's the concern.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Kathy, can you clarify what the county exec's position is? I didn't hear that.
Yeah, me either.
Amy?
Or Amy?
Sure. I mean, I've spoken with the county executive about the bill. He's taken no position on the bill.
Well, I'd be more comfortable either holding or taking no position just because of some of the small business concerns and the potential liquor board issue. And I'm not really clear on the labor side of it either and the small retailers. So I'd want to hold, but that would be my view. But I know there's a motion on the table, so.
I'm sorry, was there an answer to your question about which labor was supporting this?
No, there was not.
Councilmember Glass?
Councilmember Glass said that, so maybe he knows. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe the labor organizations that Councilmember Jawando referenced are supportive of it. Again, look at the Senate sponsor, and I know the values in which he introduces legislation, and this cuts across various different lines, as has been mentioned. So labor is supportive. There are some small business concerns, as I understand it, and going to a point that was made earlier about Costco, I don't believe this is intended in any way, for Costco, because given Montgomery County's unique law and standing in the entire country, Costco has no interest in going through ABS.
Okay, I'm still lost. Which labor supports this? Councilman, you said the one Councilmember Jawando referenced. He only referenced McGeo, I think.
And that's what I said. I referenced his reference.
McGeo supports this?
As I've been told.
Councilmember Jawando, do you know differently?
I don't know differently. I would be surprised, but I don't have any information to the contrary, which is why I'm suggesting maybe it would be nice to know the answers to these questions before we voted on it. But
Again,
so I would ask the makers of the motion, can we hold? But if not, I probably can't support right now because I just don't feel I have enough information.
Right.
So.
Kathy, Melanie, can you elaborate? Can you shed any light on whether any laborers weighed in on this at all?
I simply don't know. Maybe Kathy does. I just want to mention that the reason this write-up was not in your packet is because we have to send our packet on Thursday, and this is something that was decided by the council to go ahead and add on to the agenda today. So I think all you were provided with was probably, when that process was going through, a paragraph about the bill. So
yeah. I wasn't blaming you, Melanie. I just was saying it just was the way it happened. So
right. I'm asking. We should know, I would think, because I don't know if Amy was at the hearing, but the hearing's behind us now, right? We're late to the party on this bill. So, Amy, did any labor testify in support of this bill, or anybody from Montgomery County that we should know about?
Not anybody from Montgomery County. Now, I can't speak to whether or not there was written position in terms of labor and by McGeo. That information I don't have yet.
Okay. Yeah.
And, the way this hearing shook out, it's entirely possible that they signed up, but because they have to limit the number of folks.
Yeah, this would be contrary to their earlier position. So, Council Member Rice.
So you already answered my question. This is post-bill hearing. And so, again, just from a process perspective, not to belabor what the council president said, but us weighing in and then holding for another week for more information. I mean, we really probably want to think whether or not we even want to weigh in at that point. Because, again, the bill hearings already happened. So deliberations are already underway once bill hearings take place. So it's more than late for the party. It's more like the party already happened last week and we're like, hey, why didn't we get an invitation or whatever the case may be? I mean, but there's really no point at weighing in. I mean, it's just again, my opinion.
Councilmember Katz.
Thank you. This is an interesting conversation, and I find myself on both sides. I do believe this will be extremely detrimental to the small businesses. Obviously, the way that the state of Maryland, not just Montgomery County, but the way the state of Maryland has set up, not allowing grocery stores except those that were grandfathered, that it really did help the small business because that was their sole pretty much livelihood. A grocery store sells many other items other than the wine and beer. Having said that, I do agree that it's very, very difficult for someone. I had someone ask me this last weekend why you can't buy beer in a grocery store. You used to be able to do. They said you used to be able to do it, and they named the grocery store. And of course, that grocery store has since gone out of business. But they were one of those that had grandfathered. So I find it really to be a difficult position. I have great sympathy for the small businesses. I do believe this will affect them pretty much dramatically, because they're making all of their profit on beer and wine, whereas the grocery store is making some of their profit on beer and wine and some of it on the sale of milk and bread. So I do find myself in that position. I do believe that the Costco's of the world, I don't know that they would be allowed even under this legislation. Someone can certainly explain that one more time, but I don't believe they would be allowed under this legislation at all. But if that's wrong, I'd like to be corrected. So I really do find myself on both sides. But to the point of Councilmember Rice, I do believe that if we do wait to get more information, then we might as well not even bother. So it's today or we shouldn't do it. So I believe that it's probably, if you're weighing everything back and forth, I believe strictly for the benefit of attempting to get more grocery stores in the areas where there really is the food deserts, that this one sort of wins out. I always want to look after small businesses as well, but I believe so that we can get some grocery stores that might not want to go into a food desert area, that this could be the tipping point for them to get them there. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Friedson.
Yeah, appreciate it. A couple things. One, the hearing on the Senate side has not occurred yet. So I do think, well, I appreciate the fact that it would have been ideal to be ahead of both. Timing didn't quite work out with President's Day weekend and with everything else going on. We didn't have state ledge last week, but there still is an opportunity to weigh in. I still think it would be important for us. I do agree that if we wait beyond this, that we might then miss the party. But I will say, since it's a bicameral body unlike ours, as Councilmember Rice and Hucker know, having served in it, there are two parties, and there still is an opportunity to make the after party, so to speak, however we want to frame it. Number one. Number two, to Councilmember Katz's point, the Costco model, besides the Montgomery County dynamic with the alcohol beverage services and whether or not it's an area that they would want to pursue. There are significant restrictions in here still in terms of 50% of square footage being utilized for food and some other dynamics that may prohibit Costco as well. This bill is designed for grocery stores, and they try to define it for grocery stores. I'll also point out that while I appreciate the small business side of this with package stores, that has been the argument that is used to prevent almost every single alcohol reform in the state for the past 40 years. And it's a significant challenge. And I will just note that we're in the state of Maryland, one of only 3 states in the United States of America that doesn't allow for beer sales in grocery stores, one of only 10 states in the United States of America that doesn't allow wine sales in grocery stores. I'm not sure that, based on that, you would think that our small business dynamics would be the most vibrant in the country, but they're not. And so the idea that businesses can't coexist and there isn't an ecosystem, and the type of consumer that goes to the grocery store and gets beer when they pick up their groceries, or a bottle of wine when they pick up their groceries, versus somebody who is going for a different type of purchase to a beer and wine store, that exists everywhere in the country, including in our regional counterparts, where people are choosing in droves to go make purchases instead of making purchases here. I think the last piece that I'll say is our alcohol laws are incredibly restrictive, and that won't change just based on this policy change. It is a very small, very modest tweak to what is already one of the most regulated states and the single most regulated county in the entire United States of America when it comes to beer and wine sales. I hope that we can move forward. I hope that we will support this. It's something that our residents want in drastic numbers. They want choice. They want convenience. And this is one modest step, but a significant step towards helping to provide that.
Thank you. Councilmember Raymer.
Thank you. Yeah, I strongly support this. I really want to thank Delegate Chi This is probably a harrowing, leadership test in Annapolis to try to get significant alcohol reform legislation through. And it's really needed. Our residents expect us to modernize this antiquated regime. It's frankly an embarrassment to the county. It does not reflect well upon us. It shows a government overreach. Every time you go to the grocery store, you experience a government overreach in a way that I think people frankly do find a little bit offensive, at least grating. And I think it's great that Delegate Chi is taking it on to try to find a better path. I think the time has finally come, with new leadership in Annapolis. I think that hopefully that the time has finally come. So I think it's important for us to take a strong posture on this. As many have said, if we get asked about this issue constantly on the campaign trail, we should take a stand on it. Like we shouldn't ignore it. And we absolutely do. Not even on the campaign trail, just in our day-to-day lives. We get asked about this issue constantly. So I think it's incumbent upon us to provide leadership as well. So I support it. I think we ought to. Thanks.
Councilmember Navarro.
Well, thank you so much for, as you stated, Mr. President, that we don't really have much of an influence, but here we are debating something thoroughly in this particular space. And it's difficult because on the one hand, I keep hearing that this is such a priority for residents, but then I keep thinking that right now, the biggest priority for residents is just protecting their families and getting through. Having said that, I am a firm believer in the fact that this pandemic and many other things right now affecting us in the world calls for rethinking, reinventing, repositioning, and Montgomery County is going to have to reposition itself coming out of this pandemic in significant ways. Economic development is one of them, and some of these issues seem to be a bit odd. For that reason, I believe that it is a good step forward, and I will be supporting it, but I hope that we spend as much time deliberating on how to actually respond to the pandemic, specifically priority issues like equity and vaccinations and things like that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I don't see any other requests to speak. I'll just say, personally, I've lost a lot of Saturdays sitting through alcohol bill hearings in Economic Matters Committee on bills like this. This bill, similar bills have been around for a very long time. And I very much want to see more competition on both beer and wine sales in Montgomery County, more convenience for our residents. People have wanted that for a long time, and I certainly like the convenience you can find in other states. This bill has more impact as I read it quickly in the fiscal note on Montgomery County than anywhere else. This is a big issue. I supported a very contentious gift of a wine and beer license to Dawson's years ago that was vigorously resisted by lots of small retailers. This is a way bigger bill than this because that was only one license. I do think we need to expand beer and wine sales to grocery stores in a sort of measured way after some study. But this bill, when it's already, there are many struggling bills in Annapolis. We could get behind at the last minute. I don't feel comfortable getting behind this one without an impact study of how it would play out in Montgomery County. So with that, I guess we're just calling the roll. Nope, Mr. Councilmember Albornoz.
Flat-footed on this one, and I totally appreciate Councilmember Navarro's point because, I think all of us have been immersed in a lot of other things. And I think given what you just said, Mr. Council President, I, for one, agree with Councilmember Jawando. I understand there's a timing issue here. I get that. But I'm just in text messages right now with my team regarding the reach of this bill. I, at this point, wouldn't feel comfortable unless I had the opportunity to learn a little bit more about it, about taking a position right now. So I just think there's too many things going on right now. And to your point, we need to prioritize what we're focusing on. And for me right now, this isn't the highest priority.
Okay. So all those in favor of the motion on the table to support House Bill 996, please raise your hand. That is Council Members Glass and Councilmember Friedson and Councilmember Reamer and Councilmember Navarro. And all those opposed, sorry, Councilmember Katz, beg your pardon. And all those opposed. Council Vice President Albornoz, Councilmember Rice, Councilmember Jawando, Councilmember Hucker. Is that 4-4? Do we have 5?
I thought it was 5 the first.
Yeah,
The
okay.
support was 5.
Sorry, I wasn't writing. Okay, so
You might want to say the names again, just because it was a little confusing. Yeah.
Can I ask a question, Council President?
please.
And I'd like to ask it of Councilmember Rice, because I voted in favor of this, believing that if we didn't vote today, that we wouldn't have a say on this, so we couldn't get the additional information. And then you voted against this. Were you against the legislation, or were you?
No, it's that again, from my experience, again, something like this that is a statewide initiative. Our process in terms of where we are is not playing a role. There's a lot more that's at stake here. As you heard from the council president, this is a huge issue that goes well beyond Montgomery County. And so one in which, again, it really doesn't make a difference, my personal opinion, even as the largest county in the state, when it comes to something like this as a legislator. We're looking at much larger issues from a state perspective, looking at it from different perspectives than just as a county. And so because of that, I just really think us weighing in doesn't make a lot of sense in big, large S issues like this, ones that directly affect our county specifically. Yes, certainly we should be weighing in, but when it comes to something like this, I mean, there's so many myriad of issues with which we can weigh in. And as individual council members, certainly supporting what's there makes sense, but as a body, it just doesn't make sense for us to do it. And because there's so many winners and losers that happen as a result, the simple fact of the statement that's being made that, oh, well, it doesn't affect our bottom line revenues. Well, if you have a Giant right next to one of our county stores, it does impact it. I know, because at Kingsview, they sell beer and wine at the liquor store. And if they gave Giant the ability to sell beer and wine there, or at the Giant down the street or the Safeway down the street, it would make a difference, because that's where folks go to get their beer and wine. So it's not true. It's not true that it doesn't have an impact. So anyway, I'm not debating the bill, and I don't want to have a response. I don't want to go back and forth. I don't want to waste the time of this body, as Councilmember Navarro said, that needs to be devoted to more important things. So,
and I appreciate that. Amy, can I ask you, if we did table this, and is there time if we came back next week to before it goes to the Senate?
So the hearing is on March 5th. Caroline, is there a meeting next Monday?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, then, Mr. President, I'm actually going to change my vote and would like to table this. So, thank you.
If you make a motion to table it, I'll second the motion. I think that would take priority.
I move to table this.
That's what's on it. Okay. Councilmember Katz moves to table. Councilmember Jawando seconds. All those in favor of tabling this action until next week, right, on House Bill 996.
Speak to the motion.
Councilmember Reamer to speak to the motion.
It's not debatable, Mr. President.
I believe
Point of order.
Not debatable.
Oh, yeah.
A tabling motion is not debatable.
Actually, I saw the council rules for tabling coincidentally a couple of days ago, and I read, according to Mr. Drummer, that every council member is entitled to speak once on a motion to table.
Okay, we have staff to advise us on this.
This gets more exciting as we go along. This is
Candidly, why
No,
don't
remember,
you
remember,
I just wanted to ask a clarifying question anyway. I didn't want to debate it.
A tabling motion.
I just wanted to ask a clarifying question anyway.
That's
Well,
not.
first of all, Councilmember Katz already voted, and it's kind of unusual to allow a council member to change a vote afterwards. You no longer have a motion. So if you want to get parliamentary on us, I don't know where that goes. But my question is, Councilman Cass, do you intend to bring it back next week? If you do, I think it was said by others, but if you intend to bring it back next week, I think it would be helpful for
Yeah, it would have to be somebody in the minority.
to
Right.
know is it has to be someone in the majority
Yes.
to bring it back. So
Okay.
I just wanted to seek your clarification on that.
It would be my intention to bring it back.
Thank you.
Good question.
Just, if I might, just procedurally, whether it matters or not, it looks like you've already approved the motion 5-4. I
may not
think
be a
somebody
lawyer,
could
Mr.
move,
but I can follow
somebody,
We could move to
somebody-
unapprove it right now.
somebody could
Listen, I
move
support
to
moving this forward, but
somebody-
this isn't legislation, so it's not even clear whether or not the formal rules of procedure would even
Well,
qualify. If we want to bring it back next week, let's just bring it back next week. I mean,
Right.
this has gotten to the point of absurdity, frankly.
We got 5 that want to bring it back next week.
I
So,
disagree with what's happening here, but the fact that we'd spend any more time
understood. Thank you.
continuing it was absurd.
I'm fine with bringing it back next week, so that's it.
Sounds good.
It's fine.
Okay, we can finally move on and wonder why more residents don't tune in. Okay, now,
Well, maybe they will now and buy beer and wine to drink while they're watching it.
from our small retailers, yes.
Great, great.
Okay, now we're going to have our public safety update, colleagues. Director Winger. Sorry to keep you waiting, Chief, and others, your staff.
So I'm not certain if there's a hard stop at 1:30 or not, so we'll just see where we go just to lay a little bit of groundwork here. The Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee has voted on this package for over 18 hours now. It's been a mini series. And they've come up with 7 or 8 proposals that they're going to finalize their vote on today at 5. And I would anticipate that the Senate package will be out on the Senate floor either tomorrow or Wednesday. And it will be contentiously debated, no doubt. So we've sent charts to you about kind of what's in this package. And I thought that we would focus in the time we have left about what that JPR package looks like. We're going to focus on just those issue areas, since we'll have other meetings if we want to talk further about any of this in an overview type of setting. So I thought we would do, we have the chief, we have Jordan Satinsky from Police Department, we have Ed Lantner from the County Attorney's Office, Kathleen Boucher and Sarah Morningstar have been working closely on this package. And I thought we would go ahead and start off with discussing the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights and where it looks like the Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee has started to fall on that issue. And then we'll see how much time we have left and we'll take it from there.
That sounds great. Your question, there's a couple council members telling me they have a hard stop at 1:30. So,
Okay,
Chief, we have 12 minutes. We're glad you're here. Sorry to keep you waiting. Please go ahead.
that's all right. Okay, Kathleen, I'm going to just go ahead and turn it over to you to start this kind of an overview of how the bill came in, what the issues are, and what it's starting to look like. It's going to look like when it hits the Senate floor.
Okay, thanks, Mel. So I'll do definitely a high-level overview and defer to council as to any further details. So the bill, as it came in, was a repeal of the LEOBR and a replacement with new rules governing investigations and imposition of discipline for law enforcement officers. It still is essentially a repeal and replacement, but it is significantly different than when it was introduced. So just speaking to some of the critical issues, in terms of the actual investigation, an investigation of a police officer of a complaint filed by a member of the public will be conducted by the chief or the chief's designee, and the chief will make determinations of fact and make a decision about imposing discipline. And after that is done, the officer will have an opportunity to either accept the discipline or appeal it to a hearing board. The bill is very specific about the hearing board. Again, the chief will appoint the hearing board. One member will be an officer of higher rank. 2 members will be civilians that receive training from the Maryland Public Safety Training Commission. And the board is essentially, it may even be defined ultimately in the bill as an advisory board. It will have final authority regarding findings of fact. It'll have advisory role in terms of recommending discipline, and the chief retains final authority for discipline. There was a provision in the bill as it came in, or several provisions that would have granted local enabling authority to counties and municipalities to essentially override what I just described and to allow for the creation of an all civilian oversight board with adjudicatory authority and authority to impose final discipline. Those provisions have been stricken from the bill. The bill, as I said, has literally repealed the LEOBR in terms of investigatory process and hearing board process, but has then reinstated some. And what I mean by that, for example, internal investigations, it's new rules about timelines, subpoenas, statute of limitations, when you can do suspension with pay, without pay, what constitutes formal discipline. Those kinds of things are going to be in the bill. Also hearing boards, some procedures were put back in terms of timeline scan, subpoenas, again, production of documents, some of those are back in. And in terms of local authority, there is preemption language in the bill that the bill supersedes any conflicting state or local law, that local law on the quote unquote subject and material of the bill is preempted, and that the procedures in the bill are exclusive methods for disciplining a law enforcement officer. It also has provisions regarding collective bargaining agreements. It does essentially grandfather in existing collective bargaining agreements. So, for example, we recently signed a 3-year agreement here in Montgomery County. That bill would be grandfathered in. In terms of process, I mean, that's a really quick overview. In terms of process, all of this has been done in concept. As Mel said, after about 18 hours, where the significant of a number of pieces of legislation, but where the most significant discussions have been LEOBR, we will see final amendments, we think, tonight. Well, we will hear about them. We have actually not been able to see any of this in writing. We've been just trying to follow along with the oral discussion, but we will hopefully see what's shaping up as absolute final amendments this evening. And happy to delve in further or kind of stop there, Mr. President, in terms of what the council would prefer.
Thank you, Kathleen. That's very helpful. I got a great update from the Judicial Proceedings Chair yesterday when he was briefing our revolution. And I just want to confirm my understanding that he said, so they've taken discipline out of collective bargaining, correct?
Well, I might have to defer to Ed on that because we believe that the intent of the bill is to not allow any of this to be collectively bargained. But we also believe that there's some lack of clarity. Again, I'll let Ed speak to that. And we've actually submitted a letter from the county attorney's office asking for clarity on that. But I would defer to Ed if you'd like further.
Hear about that yesterday, but yeah, I'm sure his office could get it to you. Ed?
Yeah, it's a little unclear. I mean, the bill is taken out. Right now, the LEOBR permits collective bargaining on an alternate hearing board and the finality of that hearing board's decision, whether it's binding on the chief. That's gone. But the bill provides that you can't have collective bargaining that's inconsistent with the subtitle or with the bill. The thing is, there's a lot that's in the LEOBR now that's not in this bill. Some of the specifics of the interrogation and investigation of an officer, the kinds of notice the officer gets, can the hearing be tape recorded, polygraphing blood, urine tests, things like that. So it's silent. So does that mean when it says you can't have collective bargaining inconsistent with the bill, when the bill is silent, does that mean you can have collective bargaining and local laws on those subjects? That's not clear because it's covering less of the field than it used to. So when it just says, hey, you can't collective bargain inconsistent with this, that still leaves a lot that's open potentially.
Okay. Councilmember Jawando.
Thank you. And just on that point, Mr. Ladner, that's an important point because it could have said, for example, things that aren't included in here, you know, it could have said you can't collectively bargain those other things. You could have explicitly said that's not allowed, correct?
Yes, that's a memo we had sent, I think, to the House and for the House one and for the Senate one, asking for some clarity on this. Yes. So, for example, when it says local laws on the subject and material of this subtitle are preempted, if the subject and material doesn't cover certain things, does that mean you can locally legislate and collectively bargain those things? It's just not entirely clear. It is clear. I mean, the composition of the hearing board, you would think, could not be collectively bargained. That's specified in the law, and the finality or the recommendation, that's specified. But it's these other things that are no longer in the LEOBR. That's a little unclear.
Yeah. Well, you know, I as I think my colleagues know, myself along with Council Members Reamer and Glass sent a letter calling for the repeal. I understand the intent of many in our delegation and the chair of the committee to have substantive reform. And while the bill that has passed out of the Senate committee is better than what we have, I think there are still, it's not as good as it could be. I would love for us to take a position of just, you know, either supporting the original bill provisions on the floor, or just, you know, having outright repeal and letting, you know, I think it'd be better to let us, you know, decide, you know, if the state's not, if there's going to be this ambiguity. I know Senator Lee, Susan Lee, voted against several of these amendments that were kind of added back in, as was described by Ms. Boucher. And so, you know, I would, you know, I don't have a lot of time today. I could talk about a lot of provisions in here. But I think this is a really, really important bill. So I don't know, Mr. President, if we're going to come back to this next week. So I guess my one question would be what the timing is. They're going to have another consideration tonight, is what you said, Ms. Boucher, correct?
Yes, the committee is supposed to have in front of them complete written final amendments that they will vote on. They voted on all of this in concept on Friday, but final amendments with a lot of the details are supposed to be in front of them tonight. 4 o'clock this afternoon.
So timing matters in that sense of, you know, my view would be that we would call for the, you know, the original intent of the bill introduced by Senator Carter and the amendments that were fought against by Senator Lee and others. That would be where I am. I think this clarity issue of what can be collectively bargained. We introduced this, we put a provision in our bill, the use of force bill, to say that things can't be collectively bargained. I think that's a really critical component. So I would also say that we should add that part in there, our intent on that as well, if possible. So I'll pause there, Mr. President. I don't know how you want to proceed because I know we have limited time.
Well, that's interesting. I don't know if council members came prepared to vote on anything today because the packet said that we weren't. But Melanie, let me just ask you, that's sort of a different account that I understood this weekend on the briefing that I got. So I sort of had the impression the ship has sailed, essentially, that this has been debated, as you said, for 18 hours, and that the larger questions have been asked and answered. I mean, we're weighing in quite late in the game here, I think, or if we were to vote on this, if people were comfortable doing that, what's the likelihood we have some effect on a future debate on this?
County governments have not been key stakeholders in the debates that have gone on. It's largely been the police, the police chiefs and sheriffs, the ACLU, the General Assembly, and the Fraternal Order of Police. I think that we will not see significant changes this afternoon on this. So I would expect the package, assuming we have largely the details correct from the way we've been having to listen to it without being able to see anything. My guess is that's how the package is going to roll out. And I would assume that package will be on the floor either tomorrow or Wednesday. So that's the kind of backdrop I can provide on that.
Okay, Councilmember Rice.
So just very briefly, I'm just going to share the tactics that the Maryland Association of Counties uses after a hearing has been done, which is folks calling individual members that are on the specific committee and leveraging whatever relationships they have. A letter is not going to do anything at this point. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, I'm just telling you. So when I reach out to Senator Smith and to others and say, hey, look, this is what would help us, that's what I suggest you do. It's much more effective at this point. A letter is just merely something that's there, and sure, folks may acknowledge it. And again, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but again, they're far beyond that at this point. This is the point in which you would leverage relationships, just as MACO does when it comes to this point in time, where they say this is the point where you start picking up the phone and calling the folks that you know that are on the committee if you want to see things go one way or another. And so that would be my suggestion. Instead of crafting a letter, would be to pick up the phone, to start calling people. And just for the record, I agree with you that I would like to see something that's much stronger. But again, a letter's not the way in which to do that. I think that at this point, it's by leveraging your relationships in Annapolis. So.
Right. For what it's worth, I agree with that. I've been on record for significant repeal or reform of this for 10 years, probably. Council Member Reamer.
What is the process for the House bill, and how does that relate? You know, they have to pass and reconcile then ultimately, Melanie, or whoever, talk to us about.
Right. So that the House is working off of two main bills, and the House Judiciary has created a work group, and they met for the first time last week to talk about revisions that they want to their package. I don't know a time frame within which they intend to move that package. Kathleen, you may know more about if they've mentioned a time frame. I didn't hear it, but
no, they've just mentioned, you say it's being worked on in a subcommittee of judiciary, and they've just talked about multiple work sessions coming up.
Right. So, and again, I don't know if they intend to stop these bills and work them out before they put them into conference, but I would assume there's going to be differences, and they'll either stop the bills and work them out to avoid a conference, which just costs you another 3 or 4 days in a process, or they'll go ahead and put them in conference because they have tactical reasons why they want to do that.
All right. Well, I really would like to see in writing what the bills are. Hearing that nobody even has written down what has been, I think, potentially passed out of the committee is problematic for us to take positions. I do think we should take positions, but I don't know if I see the point in taking a position on, something that already occurred in the past versus let's take a look at what's going forward and take a position on that. I would like to better understand the House bill and its difference with the Senate bill. As best I can deduce, what some are mad about in the Senate bill is that there was a provision that allowed for civilians to have a civilian board to have the final say on discipline. And then that was what was amended out. Is that correct, Kathleen?
Yes, there were provisions that it was local enabling. It was saying it was giving to counties and municipalities the authority to adopt their own local laws that would be a substitute for the chief appointed hearing board that I referenced earlier, and it would have to be only civilians. And those provisions, those local enabling provisions, were stricken.
But what you have in place now is one law enforcement officer of higher rank and 2 civilians. This board's findings as to guilt or innocence are binding on the chief. But if it's a guilty finding, then the punishment is just a recommendation to the chief. So you still have civilians, but not all civilian. You have 2 out of 3.
That's in the existing.
No, the existing one had a chief appointed hearing officer that made a recommendation, and the chief makes the final decision. And it authorized localities to have an all civilian board. The amendment is to have 1 officer and 2 civilians. They make a finding as to guilt or innocence and a recommendation as to punishment. That's in the amended now.
Well,
Remember,
okay.
could I just, there are a couple other things, as you know, I think, like the statute of limitation, shielding complaints. There's other things in there too, but I know you know that. I just wanted to, chime in.
Other provisions. Okay.
It is-
Well,
yeah.
I think it would be very helpful to us and to the public to see. I thought the side by sides that you've done were great. I think just continuing to build that out, and I think we ought to take a position at the appropriate time. It could have been, last week, but now that things have been amended, and we don't yet really know how they have been amended, I think we ought to get clear on that and then take a position.
Right. So I'm sure you've read the bills, Councilmember Reamer. So the question, you're looking for like a fact sheet?
Well, it was just said to us that they haven't seen in writing what the amendments were.
Right. So once we get the amendments, you'll share them with us. Melanie, right?
Yes, we'll share them. We will likely update the charts and provide even additional detail outside of what's in the charts. But those charts are what we want to continue to update so we can manage this gangly package. But we will provide you with descriptions of what happened with the Senate package as soon as we see the amendments, or shortly thereafter. Give us just a little bit of time to debrief on them.
Okay. Great. Sorry, I'm just cognizant of the time here. Council Member Katz.
Thank you very much. I know we had a hard stop 5 minutes ago, so I'm going to be brief. I don't know what we would be voting on right now. I don't think we should vote today. And I heard Senator Smith speak several months ago when all this was being early on being discussed about the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights. And he made the point that I think he said 142 different police agencies in Maryland. And if we didn't have a Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights, that there would be 142 different takes on how this a situation would be taken care of, would be looked at. And so that was a concern of his as well. But bottom line is, I think we need to have much more information, and then we can have the discussion. Thanks.
Fair enough. Council Member Friedson?
Well, I agree that there are a lot of moving parts here. Obviously, a lot happened on Friday. A lot will continue to happen. I think this is going to be evolving on a day-to-day, hour-by-hour, minute-by-minute basis. I think it's really important that we continue to be briefed in real time as best as we can of what the different dynamics are and what the implications will be on the county, on county residents. Obviously, it's a very important issue. It's front of mind for many county residents. It's something that we're all closely monitoring. I also do agree with Councilmember Rice. We should be working with our delegation, and that includes those who are on the committees of jurisdictions, who chair and vice chair the committees of jurisdiction as we move through this process. I know a lot of us have very strong feelings about this. I know many of us have been voicing those opinions, but this is complicated. And I will say it's not just about reconciling two bills. On the House side, there's a consolidated bill from the Speaker. There's some other bills that address it. On the Senate side, it's a series of bills. How that will even interplay is still an open question of what that looks like. And I think, to Councilmember Rice's point, I think this is a time for phones and personal conversations and continued advocacy and direct communication more than letters. I think by the time we sign off on a letter, it will be outdated in terms of where the discussion has evolved from there. And so I just don't think it's an appropriate or particularly fruitful exercise. I think we just have to try to do our best to follow the bouncing ball and make sure that we understand what the policy ramifications and the impact on our residents are going to be as we proceed.
Councilmember Albornoz.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I do apologize, I have to jump off. Serendipitously, I have a meeting with leadership from one of our local pharmacies about piloting a vaccine program here in Montgomery County to deal with the equity issue. I'll follow up with my colleagues if I have success, let's hope. But it's with a significant decision maker. So, but just from 30,000 feet, it is amazing we're having this conversation to begin with. Obviously, we have come so far just in the last year, and I really commend our delegation and our leadership in Annapolis for their willingness and their leadership to discuss this issue. It is complex. It does have a lot of layers. There's no denying that, and no easy answers either. But I'm confident in our delegation and Annapolis's leadership. And I also acknowledge that they're in the middle of all of this, obviously, right now. And because there are so many unknowns at this point, and because there's a lot more action that will be taken as early as 4 o'clock this afternoon, it sounds like, I do think it would be more beneficial for us to reach out directly to those whom we have the most influence over to let them know specifically about our support. And acknowledging this is complex on a lot of different levels within the delegation, and that at this moment, I think would be very effective. So I appreciate this discussion. I know there will be many more. We've obviously been having it at the local level as well. But I just wanted to take a moment to stand back and reflect on the fact that we're having this discussion is significant on a number of different levels. And obviously, what transpires and what we ultimately end up with is the most important thing. But I just wanted to not lose sight of that. So thank you, Mr. President. And I've got to log off in 2 minutes to attend this other meeting, but just wanted to get those thoughts in before we close out. Thanks.
All right, log off, and thanks for trying to line it up for us. Gabe, you stole a lot of what I was going to say. Councilmember Rice and I both probably remember many years where us and many activists were asking to repeal LEOBR for year after year after year, and there was no interest in it from the House Judiciary Chair or the Senate Judicial Proceedings Chair or the Senate President or the Speaker. And all of a sudden there is, and we've gone through sort of a watershed moment. And regardless of what comes out of this, I'm sure not everybody is going to be happy. That's how Annapolis and every other state legislature and Congress, every large body works. But I'm also, like the Council Vice President, excited that there's movement at all this year. And knowing how the place works, I think it'll probably build on future reforms as well, regardless of what actually gets on the governor's desk and gets signed this year. So I think most of the body wants to defer action on this this year. Well, there's no action planned on this right now, and there's we're going to talk more about it next week. Is that where everybody is? Get another update and continue to be updated as the package moves forward.
And we'll get to the other bills that there's a lot of other bills on here
Yes,
too.
there are. Yes, there are. Okay. And Chief, I didn't leave anything out, right? I know you're patiently waiting for us here. Okay. Okay. Director Wenger, back to you.
I think we're finished.
What about
we're done.
What about the other bills Councilmember Jawanda wanted to talk about?
Well, I mean, really, I'm sorry. It's Sarah Morningstar. I'm happy to give you a probably 50,000 foot overview in a minute. But there was the Senate passed or whatever. The committee is working to put in its final package a revised MPIA with personnel records, Anton's Law. That would be part of the package. Also creating an independent investigation unit with the allowing the investigation to start first at the local level and then proceed to the AG's office. They discussed no-knock warrants. The bill was to totally eliminate it. They didn't eliminate it, but they created ways to be able to tighten that process. Body-worn cameras, creating mental health, with the whole idea being where there's smoke, there's fire, try to get at mental health issues, and also stopping the procurement of surplus military equipment. All these things are in this bill, and we could go into greater detail if you want, or I could respond to questions later. But as Melanie described, it's all a work in progress.
Well, I know. Thank you, Sarah. I know the hard stops people had at 1:30 have moved to 1:45. So cognizant of that, I will allow us to adjourn. I know we're going to lose a couple council members in 1 minute, well, 0 minutes. So let me thank everybody for all your hard work and your patience waiting for us. This is all to be continued. You can, if you haven't served on it, you know now why the House Judiciary Committee routinely meets till 11 o'clock at night. Thank you all so much. See you soon. Bye.
And if I had $266 million to spend on Vision Zero, there would be a